Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy.
And before we start, I gotta tell our Spanish-speaking audience something quickly. Los lives normalmente eran en español y antes los hacíamos en inglés en este canal también, pero la verdad, para que nos ayude el algoritmo, es bueno hacer en vivos o lives. Entonces, como Guy todavía no habla español, los vamos a estar haciendo en inglés hasta que aprenda español o hasta que yo tenga tiempo de hacerlo sola. Pero si se quieren quedar, si hablan inglés o si le quieren poner subtítulos después, entonces bienvenidos. That was it.
Okay, let's get into it.
Sure. So
Today was a big day for Donald Trump.
yeah, I was gonna say not much happened today, but yes.
Well, I don't know if a whole lot happened, but the Donald Trump inauguration speech where he took the presidency.
Well, Donald Trump has now become the president of the United States, the 47th president of the United States.
And in his speech, it was just like one thing after another after another. I must have wrote down 20 points here, and I don't even think I got them all. If he's able to follow through even on half of these points, he will be the most influential president in modern America. He kept the speech rather short too, which for everything, it seemed like every sentence was a jaw-dropping moment. Well, we'll start off with some of the lighter things he said. He wants to start an external revenue agency. Right now, the United States works on an internal revenue agency taxing its citizens. He now wants to tax other countries to do business with the United States. And hopefully he wants to decrease the amount of income tax charged to the people themselves until there's hopefully no income tax. He's pretty much targeted three places of taxes he wants to get rid of first, and that's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and he doesn't want to tax Social Security checks, which are all working man taxes. So your average blue collar worker would love if he can do that, but in order to do things like this, he's going to have to tax other countries with tariffs, and not just tariffs. With his external revenue agency, we can see now he's going far beyond tariffs, and he's wanting to bring other types of taxes in for foreign businesses and entities, things like that. The United States ran off of tariff tax for most of its history. The Internal Revenue Service was created during the war, and it was only supposed to be for a short period of time and only supposed to tax the very rich and the very elite. We see what's become today, and if he's successfully able to implement no more taxes on its citizens, it's going to be hard for other countries to justify taxing their citizens.
Well, hopefully they'll figure that out. But I think a lot of countries are very dependent upon the taxes, and we have to see how and what's going to happen with the U.S. But there seems to be some sort of concrete plan as to how he's going to do it, how they're going to manage.
Well, I have no doubt that other countries are reliant on the taxes of their citizens. I also think that's highly illegal, and they shouldn't do it. They should find other ways to do it. I think a lot of citizens think it's a criminal what the government does through the tax system. They say they're giving you something, but a lot of it goes in their own pockets through corruption.
We have a dog.
Another thing is, it's completely taboo online to talk about it's completely taboo online to talk about not taxing. So why don't you take it over for a moment?
Yes. So yes, whenever somebody mentions that they want to take away taxes, a lot of people assume always that it's going to be taking away taxes from just the rich and that it's to benefit just the rich. But he has, and the incoming administration has tried to make it very clear that this is to benefit the people, because he is one of the newest incoming, more populist presidents that we were seeing, aside from Milei and what there once was as presidents.
Yeah, well, you're constantly seeing leftists talk about take from the rich and redistribute wealth through like socialism, communist type programs. And capitalism works fine. And if you can tax foreign nations, then you can actually create socialistic programs for your citizens without actually having to steal from your own citizens in order to create these programs. So when these programs don't work, or if they don't work, then the citizens don't feel as violated. And they're willing to try more experimental type things in the society, I guess.
And aside from the taxes, what else came out of his very long speech?
Well, I also wanted to say on the taxes,
Okay.
it's a completely different framework that Trump's trying to bring in than Biden. Biden had recently hired 90,000 IRS agents, and he gave them all guns, which was like, why does a tax agent need a gun? They're going to go out, and they started going out to people's houses, and the way Biden had politically weaponized the system previously, it was very concerning if he would have got another term and actually implemented those 90,000 IRS tax agents against his political enemies. So it's really good to see maybe those 90,000 workers can now be redistributed into the External Revenue Agency rather than against their own citizens. Okay, what else happened? There was a complete shutdown of the border, or not a complete shutdown, but man, you talk about him stepping into office one day. He campaigned on this, so you knew it was going to come.
And he has been campaigning since he started. That's basically the starting issue, and one of the reasons why I guess a lot of Mexicans don't really like him. But in overall, I mean, at least he's going to be keeping, apparently, to his promise.
Well, he wants to keep out illegal aliens, but welcome in legal immigration, and he can bring in more legal immigration if they can curate the type of people they're letting in. So it would be better for the country overall, more prosperous for the people that are allowed to come in. So he instantly deployed military and police through executive orders to the border, which really curbs it almost instantly. He also shut down the app and canceled all appointments that were made for people that had crossed the border illegally. Basically, Biden made it legal for illegal immigrants to come in the country through this app. And he's completely canceled that. And the border and the military that are at the border are announcing that they're going to be arresting these people and using violence if need be. Mm-hmm. Which, yeah.
Well, I mean, starting with the fact that he's trying to focus initially, at least, in the criminal aspect of it and the people that have actually committed crimes, I think that might actually win him over more people than if he was just doing it blanket. But getting rid of that app that was essentially allowing anyone and everyone to come in and just, just using a cell phone without any checks, that's what I think was one of the most worrying things for the population. Because if you just imagine anybody can walk through your front door just because they filled out an app, well, it's not very...
Well, the app was legalizing illegal immigration. And this was what was so deceptive about the numbers of illegal immigrants going into the United States. And we have to recognize the United States takes more immigrants than any other nation on earth. You can combine some of the other biggest nations on earth, and it doesn't even come close. That includes legal and illegal. So if the United States wants to stop illegal immigration for a little while or for permanently, I don't see any problem with that, considering they are bringing the most immigrants into the country compared to any other country in the world.
Then what about the people that say or argue that it's not fair for the people that are already there, or the people that we're raiding, or that it's cruel and it's a horrific treatment of all the migrants and all that?
Donald Trump's made it very clear that this was coming. So any migrants that were coming up to the U.S. border should have known this. Mm-hmm. And now he's deployed the military and the police, and he's basically stopped illegal immigration in its tracks. And not only that, he threatened the 25% tariff, which we'll be going over later, to Claudia Sheinbaum. And now she is working with him to curb that illegal immigration, to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, and to start securing Mexico's southern border, which will greatly reduce the amount of people that go into the U.S. southern border.
Because I mean, in general, it doesn't either benefit Mexico either to have a lot of unvetted, unchecked people, and to have an unsecure southern border either, because we have also seen crime increase within Mexico and gangs forming and like these huge mass swaths of people coming up. And the Remain in Mexico policy is more of an incentivizer for the Mexican government, I think, to act also to protect and defend their own border. Because it's not just like a lot of people think that all the immigrants are just from Latin America and they're just, looking for a better shot at life. But there has been discovered, for example, a lot of hotels that only house Chinese people in the Guatemalan border. There's also been discovered a lot of people flying into places.
Okay, let's put it
close to the
simply. It's not
border.
just discovered. It's some of the largest groups crossing the border right now are of African, Chinese, and Russian descent. And these are very dangerous groups to have in the country, especially if they're unmonitored and unchecked. When people are coming across the border, you want to know exactly who they are and what their background is. If you let in a bunch of Venezuelan migrants because they emptied their prisons out, that's an extremely dangerous situation for the United States, and we've seen the repercussions of that in the U.S.
And in the U.S., but also as IN, we got a message from someone called AN, greetings from Guadalajara. As a Mexican, I think immigration restrictions driven by, tried by Trump are accurate, or else the U.S. will end up like France, the U.K., Germany, which, yes, let's be nice and kind and great for all people, and everybody's welcome, but then you end up with not vetting and doing the proper checks on people.
Even though I'm very pro stopping the illegal immigration into the U.S., I will say that the U.S. has a lot less of a problem with illegal immigration if it was just focused on Latin America, because the core values of a lot of Latin American countries align with the U.S. Yes. If you see what happens in Europe, you're having a lot of Muslim countries where the value system does not align with a lot of the European countries, and you're having these grape gangs and things like this, and it's become, violence is a huge problem. Violence against women is a huge problem within Europe. So the European immigration situation is much different than the U.S. immigration situation, but you are seeing people from all around the world come up through the U.S. border. It's not the traditional form of migration you used to see, primarily just from Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico and Latin America. And yeah, again, I agree. The values are very similar. So the assimilation, if you want to call it, or just the living with each other used to be a lot easier. But now that they've discovered that, I mean, Biden let in who knows how many bad people with bad intentions that have groups, not just from Latin America, but from other countries very far away, be it Africa, the Middle East, etc. I mean, at some point, you have to also worry about your own citizens. You can't worry about the citizens of the world if you're not also taking care of your own country, because then you end up without a country.
Well, maybe we talk about another aspect of this, and another aspect of this is going to be democratic states like California trying to become migrant safe hubs, where they're going to refuse to deport any migrants, and they're going to refuse to try to go capture any migrants that are illegal, or if they go through the prison system, they're going to release them and things like this. So it's going to cause a huge rift within the U.S. government. The federal government is going to really clash with democratic states here, I think, on these immigration policies. The main three places you'll see this is Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York. Really all of California, though, because you have San Francisco as well.
But I do think a lot of citizens, and we had already seen them even standing up within their own, community meetings, saying, hey, something needs to be done about this, even with the mayor of New York City. And in Chicago, people, mayors and governors are actually wanting to do something about it. And now I think they have more of an excuse to be like, okay, yes, I'm going to listen to my own citizens.
This was the surprising thing, I think, for a lot of people. For a long time, it was if anybody said anything about this, they were racist, and they thought this was white people being racist. And it really ended up not becoming an issue of white people versus immigrants, but it became a thing of the Black communities and the Latino communities especially were feeling displaced by these migrants because they were being put into their communities and taking all the resources from their communities, taking their jobs. So the people that were displaced the most were actually Black workers and Latino communities as well.
Yeah, Latinos that had been there for a long time and had built whole entire lives.
And you've seen this in Chicago with the city councils and stuff. It was just crazy, the people that were standing up, and you've seen entire Black communities become Trump supporters in the process.
And that's also, I think, what helped him really, gain more and more traction. And the fact that even the people that the other side is saying, that's who you're hurting the most, are standing up and saying, no, we actually like what he's saying because we've been affected by these policies the most, and nobody believes us. And now finally somebody heard them.
Well, I really hope he does follow through on what he said today. Today, he gave a heartfelt thank you to the Black and Latino communities, and he realizes they voted for him in record numbers this time. A lot of it had to do with the immigration and how their communities were displaced, and he said he wouldn't forget that. And so I'm really hoping he really follows through on some campaign promises to help out these communities. And I would hope that education would be a place they can do this. So if the parents themselves get to choose which school their kids go to, this could really help to increase the education in these disenfranchised communities, because right now people have to go to school in the districts they're closely located. So if you're in an impoverished district, you're going to go to an impoverished school.
And there's a gigantic mafia of the teachers unions that especially like to take over like the most impoverished and not doing well communities and, put their rule over it. And of course, they're all connected to the Democrats. And so they have a lot of policies that don't actually incentivize learning because they're more focused on
indoctrinating children.
That, and also just telling everybody they're doing great because they want to feel like they're doing good. But that doesn't help anybody.
Well,
not teaching children doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I also see the indoctrination of children within the American school system, and they primarily want to target these disenfranchised areas because a lot of these students come from single parent households. So there's not this firm foundation at home to bring the same kind of watchful eye and moral characteristics and going to church and things like this. So it's easy for the teachers to really indoctrinate these kids, or a lot easier than for if these kids were coming from 2-parent households, I think. And I think that really needs to be addressed, because I think that's one of the big issues in the United States, and it's the family unit and family values.
And okay, so
let's go into the next one. And this one's probably the most controversial thing he said. I think it's going to rally a lot of support within America, but outside of America, it's going to cause an uprising. And that's, he's going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Well, I mean, I think, and it has been analyzed quite a bit, that he is actually, there's a lot of legal processes that have to happen for him to actually be able to do that. I don't know if it's going to take effect in the States or everywhere, but there is a whole process because every country has to agree to a name change, especially of like a big area that everybody uses. But I mean, if he wants to try to do it,
we completely disagree with this. I think Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump's there, and he's going to take action. I think these things he's saying, and when he says something like the Gulf of Mexico, you look who's at his inauguration ceremony today, and you're seeing all the tech oligarchs right behind him. Yeah. The people that control Google are right there. The most used map in the world is Google Maps. So if he has access to the CEO and he tells them to change it, I think he's going to change it.
He can change it in Google Maps. I just don't think he can legally change it, as in for the world.
I think he only needs to change it.
And it's a petty thing to make Sheinbaum angry.
I think you only have to change it in Google Maps. And once you do Google Maps, other American mapping organizations and things like this are going to begin to change it. And the general public, if it's changed within Google Maps, it's going to have a huge psychological effect on them actually calling it the Gulf of America.
I don't think it's like this huge thing. I don't think he's actually going to do it, even though he's saying it. He's doing it. He does this a lot and people don't understand it. He's riles people up and he makes these exaggerated claims, and then everybody goes crazy, and it actually helps him because it creates news about it.
Okay, on some other things on this list, yes, but on this particular thing, this was connected to other issues as well. And one of those other issues is he's going to rename some of these monuments. These leftists have been taking the old names down and putting their own names on.
Yes, but that's in his own country. He's allowed to do that in his own country.
He thinks the Gulf of Mexico is his country.
It is not his country. It is in
Mexico.
He said as a Mexican, it's in Mexico.
Okay, well,
it's called the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, a lot of it's in Texas.
Not a lot of it. The upper fourth.
And he also said he was going to expand the United States. So,
sure. If he expands into Canada, as people who lived in Canada, I think a lot of people would be very okay with that and really want and need that. Even with Poilievre coming in, Pierre Poilievre, the candidate for the Conservatives, now there might be an opening. But I think a lot of people, even if Poilievre was there, would say we would rather be part of America now than Canadian because it's that bad.
Yeah. So, and then one of the other things he said was there was going to be no tariffs on Canada, and I believe that would have included Mexico, at least temporarily. And I had some insight on this, and the insight was he's just taking office. If he puts a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, the stock market is going to take a big crash in the first month that he's in office, and he doesn't want that. What he wants is the stock market to go up. And a good way to manipulate the stock market is to say, we're going to put this tariff on Mexico and Canada, and then the day he takes office, say he's not going to do it. And that's going to cause the stock market to go up. Also, it allowed him to see Mexico and Canada's hand, meaning if he ever wants to put tariffs on Mexico or Canada in the future to try to get them into some kind of trade deal, he can use it as leverage. He knows exactly what they're going to do now. And Canada had absolutely no leverage against them. They said they were going to cut off the oil. Come to find out, all the oil pipelines run into the United States. So then Canada can sell their oil to anybody.
Yes. And again, that just proves the point that I was trying to make, where he will say these bombastic things and threaten things, but then either to get his way or just to get the conversation started, and then he will actually do something that's a bit lighter or a bit different than what he said. But that's his technique and tactic, and I think a lot of people still to this day don't understand that's how he works.
Yeah, and he's also really scared Canada and the United States. If you looked at the reaction, the media was freaking out, the politicians were freaking out, they were taking drastic action and trying to get ready for this. And now he's put them in a situation where they can feel a little bit more relaxed, like they're his friends and they can work with him. So they're going to want to do everything in their power to work with him, because they're not going to want to feel the wrath of that 25% tariff. Both Mexico and Canada's economy are reliant on the US, almost too much. And especially Canada.
Yes.
Do you want to say anything else about that? I'm going to drink some water or no?
No.
Okay, let's talk about the war on the cartels.
No. I mean, as people located where we are, I don't think we can talk too much about this, but
Well, just what he said.
He is declaring that, as what had happened before, it seems very similar to what happened before. He's now wants to go to war with organized criminals.
Well, I think this is a three-part situation he has, and he's using previous law that was a lot of it was forgotten. So he's going to now label the cartels as a terrorist organization, which gives
as a bad people organization. We can't say that word.
I just did.
I know.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Anyway, he's going to label them as organization, and that's going to allow him to take different strategic methods to go after them and shut down the border and things like that. Also, he was going to implement a law to deport anybody that was a member of a foreign gang or was a known member of a foreign gang or cartel. So he's going to try to clean up the U.S. within the U.S., and then I would expect him to take covert military action against them to try to curb their power. And number three is the border, and that's the hugest one, because he has complete control over that border. And now that he's deployed police, military, he's going to build the wall. If he completely shuts down that border, and they do have ground penetrating radar and things like this, so they can know where all the tunnels are and things of this nature, it's really going to hurt the amount of money the cartels are bringing, and do they really want to have that fight overall? Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens. I know I am constantly saying a country that is like the cartels, it was the KGB in Russia, and eventually they legitimized, and that's who's running the country to this day. So if Trump really takes on the cartels and is able to break their back, it may force them into legitimization within Mexico and within the government itself.
Which I don't know how happy that's going to make the Mexican people, but
if it cuts down on crime and other things, it's going to be interesting what happens.
But on the way there, it's going to be
it could get really violent here.
Yes.
So it's something definitely to take an eye on, but it's not something he just said. He's actually using laws and things that are actually already in the books in the United States to do this. So
to deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing we had was, now there's only two genders. Yeah. So this is big for you.
Well, how's it big?
Because
for me?
you're always talking about this.
Well, I mean, it's not big for me, but for the longest time, the U.S. government wasn't recognizing the fact that there is a man and a woman biologically and genetically, no matter what you identify or think you are. And they were actually enacting laws to protect those who wanted to pretend to be something they're not. And now he's come out and said that as a country and as in the legislation and in the books, basically, in the US, there is only a man and a woman.
Yeah, he said it very firmly and very simply that after today, the U.S. will only recognize two genders, and that is male and female. He went on further in the speech later on when he talked about the military. He said there'd be no further experimentation or psyops conducted on their own military, which is kind of funny because to think that...
To admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So... do you want to say anything else about that?
Well, that's a big win. And then the reclamation of Title IX, which means that girls in universities and girls and women in sports can, go back to having their own sports, at least in large swaths of the U.S. that have not still gone and decided to go down the completely mindless, crazy route. But it is good to see that the conversation got to the point where now it is, something he's talking about. For the longest time, he wasn't talking about it. And I think
no longer recognize anything other than a male and a female. Boom. That's going to change things on a global scale, really, because the United States is the country of free speech. So they kind of dictate the global conversation of what culture is. So,
and I think, again, people are going to still identify as they want, and they still should not be, harassed or bad things should happen to them. But in the legal sense and in the places where it matters, in the women's spaces places, in the prisons, in
the transitioning of children is primarily the thing I think people were upset about.
That too. But starting with that and with the protection of, rationality and biology, and then the indoctrination of children into essentially cutting off body parts and mutilating themselves, that is stopping, which
and
means that in
blockers
schools
as well, I would think.
Yes, chemically castrating children. But in schools now, that is not going to be the lessons. At least it's going to take a while, but it's not going to be the main lessons that they're taught. They were taught that they can be any gender they want and they can identify as whatever they want. But psychologically, that's damaging, and a lot of children were opting to, go the full route because of twisted science and twisted legislation, and a lot of activists. Yeah.
Well, then the next thing he addressed was free speech. He said there will be no more cancellations, and that free speech will be free speech again in America, and they will set the example for the rest of the world. And because he did have all the tech oligarchs there, we know how cancellations really rooted themselves into the society, and it was through the technocracy of places like Facebook and Google and things like this. And they did it through fact-checking organizations was one of the primary things. What he did was, rather than take control of these fact-checking organizations and make them conservative-leaning, he said no more fact-checking organizations. He wants to do fact-check more like fact checks.
Okay, drink water. Meanwhile, I'll read from IN. Again, thank you for sending super chats and not super chats, chats and questions. Says, do you think the anti-woke measures that Trump has in mind could permeate to Mexico given the pro-woke government that we currently have?
Well, I would definitely say this. All of the wokeness that you see in other countries emanates from the United States through NGOs.
And China.
So a lot of the NGOs that exist within Mexico aren't actually Mexican NGOs.
Yeah. Or they're supported by American NGOs or British NGOs, but essentially American NGOs. And I think, and I've said it and mentioned it in other videos I did in Spanish, that these NGOs, now that they're noticing that they're losing ground in the US and in other European countries, they're turning to Mexico, to Africa, to Latin America in general, and they're going to try what they tried in these other countries, but stronger here. Because, especially in countries that still have a government like the one we have here, they will have a better chance of trying to implement it now that they've learned what doesn't work. So it might come even stronger, I think.
Well, Mexico's...
But people themselves will notice it faster because of how information flows as fast nowadays, I think.
Well, it's going to be interesting, too, because a lot of social media that is used here is American social media. So I don't know how much it's going to be able to permeate if the social media platforms are the conversations kind of changed a little bit. We'll see.
But I think the upper echelons that have these connections with these NGOs and organizations, they're the ones that are going to be kind of dictating up, top down what happens.
But he's also
in
going,
their companies, etc.
Trump's also going after the NGOs themselves, so it's going to be interesting what happens with that.
Yeah.
If he's able to actually curb this, we'll see.
But with the NGOs, you cut off one head and 5 spring up, and because that's where the people go. They don't want to have other jobs.
And they asked specifically about Mexico. I think Mexico has really been targeted with transgendered ideology through the LGBTQ community, especially. You can see this in recent times where they're making these high-budget Hollywood films, and they revolve around transgenderism in Mexico.
Was Emilia Perez.
Not just Emilia Perez.
Conclave.
And Conclave.
Well, they don't revolve around Mexico, but they're using a lot of.
No, hold on. The priest in Conclave that was transgendered.
They're using a lot of Mexicans and Mexico and Mexican imagery to kind of bring in, because the movie Queer with Daniel Craig and what's his face, Timothée Chalamet, I think. I don't remember who the other one was, but the young kid. That movie's also based in Mexico. So like there's these like big Hollywood movies that are ticking all the woke boxes that are now kind of centering in some way towards Mexico, because they can't do it in Africa because they're way too traditional, and they think Mexico isn't, and they think Mexico's starting to move their morals and their values towards that, because that's what
because of Mexico City.
The people, that's what the people at the top, was what I was going to say, have started to do, because they want to be like America.
A lot of the financing for what's going to come out of Mexico is going to revolve around Mexico City, and a lot of the ideology in Mexico sprouts out of Mexico City.
Yeah.
So it's very liberal.
We've seen it on TV. We've seen it on open TV. I mean, the veneration of a lot of these characters that are now popped up kind of all of us out of the blue, that are trans, LGBTQ. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the focus on it and the making it the center of everything, I think that's the issue.
And this is something that wasn't in his speech, but it kind of is, and it's something he's talked about, which a lot of people haven't picked up on, and that's Trump's really viewing the United States through the lens of a multipolar world, and he wants to open up talks, and he's going to meet with Xi Jinping within the week, and then Putin. I believe he doesn't want to go to war with these countries, and he wants to be a peacetime president, which he also said today. But in order to do this, he wants to secure the American pole, as America being the leader of that pole. That would probably be Mexico, Canada, everything from the Panama Canal up. And I think a sub-part of that pole would be South America as well. And I think he's trying to secure a North American pole for North Americans, and he's trying to make it strong.
And I mean, he has Milei there at least.
Well, not only Milei. He's got Pierre Poilievre coming in Canada. He has Milei. He has the El Salvadorian president. You have a lot of people within Brazil as well. So you're having a huge conservative uprising, and in a lot of countries, even like Mexico, most of the country's conservative. You just have primarily,
or if not fully conservative, there's still the values and the value set and the founding principles.
Yeah, the unwavering value set of religion
are still there.
Yeah, so it's harder to have the society move when they have an unwavering value set that's set in religion, which is a good thing, even if you're a secularist, I think.
Yeah. But that's also why they want to target the places that are going to be the hardest to conquer, because now that they've lost the U.S., they want to go find who else will listen to them.
Well, I think Trump's going to crush Europe and the allies that are leftist right now. It's the end of the global leftist order.
And they've also realized within their countries, in Europe specifically, as we were talking about immigration, that all the policies that they were putting forth that were very to the left, that were very social justice-y, that were very pro-immigration, they're noticing it doesn't really work, and their lives have not improved. They've gotten worse. Everything's more expensive. And then themselves as countries have kind of started to lose a little bit of ground within the, geopolitical sphere.
Well, I think Europe's done, and it's going to get cut up and divided between Russia, China, and the United States.
If they let it, yeah.
Well, it's not if they let it. They blew up their own pipeline. They were so invested in this Ukrainian war. Just the thing, Germany is completely deindustrialized. All their manufacturing is moving over to the United States because of the Ukrainian war. It's not coming back because energy prices are too high. There's nowhere for them to get cheap energy because they've dug their own grave. They not want to use Russia as a trading partner, which is the cheapest energy. So now they're going to have to buy more expensive energy off the U.S., even if it's the same price, and it now doubles in price because they have to transport it over there.
Yes, how Europe dug its own grave. And again, a lot of this also comes from the strict adherence to a lot of what is called the normal vernacular woke, or, communist-y, Marxist-y, socialist-y policies, and now noticing that it hasn't helped really anyone, and the experiment has gone on for enough time.
Well,
like it's been enough.
And it's not like this is some kind of annoyance to Trump. Everybody in his cabinet, from Tucker Carlson to Don Jr., talk on a regular basis about what these liberal countries are and how they need to change. And primarily, Tucker Carlson is taking on Justin Trudeau as a pet project. So I could see Trump implementing tariffs eventually on Trudeau just to get him out of office. And
That's a whole.
He's going to have a lot of power.
Conversation.
He's going to have a lot of power over Europe, especially because the funding of NATO and things like this. Mm-hmm. And Europe is desperate for the United States to
still have to see if Fauci actually accepts the pardon. But if he does,
there's no way he doesn't accept the pardon. He's the biggest criminal in the United States. It's the one
in the
guy,
world, I would say, not just
it's the one person we wanted to see prosecuted. And the next subject actually was the pardon that Biden did give out. So I got a list of the better known names. I didn't put the lesser known names because people wouldn't know them, but Biden basically pardoned Fauci. The January 6th committee, anybody that was on or testified in the January 6th committee against the J6ers got a pardon. Biden's brother, James Biden, and James Biden's wife got a pardon. Biden's sister, Valerie, and her husband, John, got a pardon. His brother, Francis, got a pardon. General Mark Milley got a pardon. And these pardons were given out from birth to death. Like, it's crazy. These pardons don't seem legal to me, and I think that will be challenged in court because a lot of these people have claimed they hadn't committed any crimes. The pardon itself doesn't specify what they're being pardoned of. It's just a blanket pardon saying any crimes that were committed at any point in their life they cannot be prosecuted for, which seems absolutely insane to me. And it makes the Democrats and the liberals seem extremely hypocritical because I remember when Trump was getting out of office, people thought he was going to give blanket pardons to himself and to his family, and he did none of that. Mm-hmm. And we've seen what happened to him. He was prosecuted to high hell. They made up laws in states like New York to specifically prosecute Trump, and we know it was specifically to prosecute Trump because the first case that was brought under these new laws were against Trump. Mm-hmm. So they're scared that Trump was going to do to them what they did to him.
Yes. And I mean, one of your favorite lawyers in the world, Robert Barnes, has this phrase that's confession through projection. They do what they think is what they actually want to do, they say you will do. So yes, Trump is going to prosecute us all. Meanwhile, they've been prosecuting him for who knows how long now. And I mean, all the other things that have happened to him, the pew-pew attempt, all of that as well. So, I mean, we're just seeing kind of the inevitable conclusion of their confession through projection by pardoning essentially the people that most needed to be and should be prosecuted. And if they accept the pardon because they have to accept the pardons, then that just means they're guilty, which I mean, I think that most of the world agrees that they are, and that at least they've done something. But
well, we know Fauci is guilty because of his emails and because of he's implicated in the funding of the Wuhan lab and the 57 biolabs in Ukraine that were discovered, which was absolutely insane. But beyond that, the one person I didn't see on the list was Bill Gates. So I was actually surprised I didn't see Bill Gates' name on the list. And I think that's going to be an area they're going to be able to focus in on. If people don't know, Bill Gates is already being prosecuted within India for vaccination-related crimes. He's not allowed in that country at all. They've completely banned him from it. Mm-hmm. They also banned him, but they want to prosecute him, so it's kind of contradictory. But a lot of his nonprofit companies are neck deep in some devious activities. Yes. So I would like them to see them investigate Bill Gates. And of all the tech oligarchs that were there today, Bill Gates was the only one that wasn't there. So that would be interesting.
Also, Bill Gates, for some reason, owns a lot of the farmland in the U.S., same as China.
Yeah. The next thing I was going to go into was Greenland and the Panama Canal. So
That's
I think
a
I
long
see
topic.
Greenland differently than the Panama Canal, but he gave some hard words on what he was going to do with the Panama Canal. And he said, we gave the Panama Canal, we didn't give the Panama Canal to the Chinese, we gave it to the Panamanians, and now we're going to take it back. He's angry that the Chinese are running the port through their management companies. But more than that, and I don't think it's said and a lot of people know, but one of the deep water ports in the world has been built in South America, just on one side of the Panama Canal, and that's built by the Chinese. I believe it was in, well, I want to say Peru, but I'm not sure. Anyway, and that port is going to connect all the other Chinese ports built in South America, where they're going to consolidate the ships in the deep water port so they can use a bigger ship to go around the world to kind of control trade. If they can strategically shut down the Panama Canal to the Chinese, it's going to really damage their shipping ability worldwide, globally, and hurt their manufacturing.
Peru.
Yeah, in Peru. Now, I think I don't know. It's going to be interesting how he does that. I think he just negotiates a deal, but he has a lot of leverage over Peru, so we'll see what happens. Greenland, on the other hand, is something else, because Greenland's owned by Denmark.
Oh. I don't know.
So Greenland, I know.
Okay.
Greenland's
Why are you asking me?
Greenland's owned by
I'm not
Denmark.
thinking right now.
So when Denmark was asked what they think about Greenland joining the United States, Denmark said the people of Greenland will get to decide their own fate. And why don't you take it from there?
And hold on, there I am.
So he said that,
Okay, go back.
basically, the people of Greenland do not like being a part of Denmark because they're not able to exploit their own natural resources and become richer from it. So if they were to separate from Denmark and become a country on their own, they still would have trouble exploiting those natural resources because they just don't have the technological development. But if they did join the United States, they would completely be able to exploit their own natural resources and things like this. So the country would become extremely rich. It's also in the U.S.'s benefit because there's only a 50,000 person population within Greenland. So it wouldn't affect the voting bloc within the United States. What I mean by that, Greenland supported Kamala Harris. 85% of the population supported her, and only 15% supported Trump. So if there was millions of people there, if you integrate them into the United States, it would affect the voting bloc on a federal election. But because the population's so small,
But I still think that would take a very long time to figure out.
I don't know.
More than 4 years, for sure.
I think he's cutting a deal within 4 years for Greenland.
I mean, cutting a deal, sure. But again, I think it's one of his whole, I'm going to go very big with what I say, and then I'm just going to reel it back into what it actually
Well,
is
he
going
also
to
needs
be.
he also needs Greenland for the shipping lanes and things
Yes.
like this, just like why he needs Panama. But the Arctic Circle is beginning to open up. Russia has the most nuclear icebreakers in the world, and they're looking to control those shipping lanes. So Trump needs not only Alaska, he needs Greenland, and that brings Canada into the talk, where I think he wants to be able to install military bases in the Canadian Arctic as well.
Ian, again, has an interesting question. I think you probably, because you're more geopolitics, I'm more cultural and social, but do you think potential military actions from USA and Greenland may shake the foundations of NATO, as both USA and Denmark are members?
So I don't think the U.S. is going to take military action against Greenland, no.
Okay, from
So-
the USA and Greenland, okay.
What will happen is Denmark's on already shaky ground with the citizens of Greenland. Greenland for a long time hasn't wanted to be a part of Denmark. There's been a separatist movement in Greenland, much like there was in Quebec in Canada, but they can't garner enough, I guess, power against Denmark themselves to have that separatist vote. But with America backing them now, or backing the people of Greenland, you may see a separatist vote with Greenland separating from Denmark first, and then potentially either joining the United States or, more likely than not, cutting business deals with American corporations and the American military.
What would happen with NATO if that happened?
Well, if Greenland separated from Denmark, they would no longer be part of NATO. but they would have American military bases, so they'd be probably much better protected than NATO.
Oh, the U.S. is still kind of part of NATO, even though they don't want to be.
Well, they're completely part of NATO. That's the thing. But if the
Even though they don't want to be, yeah.
if the Europeans don't continue to pay the 5%, which Donald Trump is demanding, which they are only refusing to pay, they're paying like 2 and 2.5% when they should be paying 5%, and they wonder why they can't win the Ukraine war. It's because they haven't paid into the system to build the weapons, and that's why they don't have enough missiles. But
again, now if you might be seeing, if you've never seen us interacting together, he's more the geopolitics, deep politics, and I'm more of the social cultural anti-woke one.
oh, so this one's kind of between both of us.
Okay.
He was talking about the United States was going to be a space-faring civilization again.
How is that?
And that he's going to
plant,
and he's going to plant the American flag on Mars. And when he said that, Elon Musk got the biggest smile on his face. You could see him. It was a perfect shot on TV. But I do believe him when he says it, and I think robots will plant the flag on Mars, not humans.
And I mean, he wants to go back to that era of American exceptionalism, the battle to get to the moon.
And that's what he said.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, I totally see him kind of doing that mostly for the benefit of his presidency being known as, where we got to Mars or whatever.
well, I also think it's a way to
And there are a lot of resources on Mars.
Well, I also think it's a way to appease Elon Musk.
Yes.
And
Keep him occupied. Go get to Mars, leave us alone.
Well, I don't think it's about go get to Mars. If Musk ends up getting to Mars with the infrastructure he set up on Earth, he's going to be the most powerful person on the planet. He has a underground mining company that builds tunnels under places like Las Vegas and Los Angeles, which that technology can be used on Mars for mining of precious minerals. Mm-hmm. The Cybertruck specifically is supposed to be the exact frame that they're going to use for space rovers and things like this on Mars. All of his companies really, if put in the context of Mars, would create a mining company and create minerals I would assume to bring back to Earth. And they say, yeah. So you have anything else to say about Mars?
Meh, I mean, I think it's one of those things where he's saying making these big announcements and then kind of paring it back down. I just think that's the way he operates.
I think Musk.
I don't think we'll get to Mars in the next 4 years.
I think within the next 10 years we'll be on Mars, no problem.
I mean, 10 maybe, sure.
I think
the world doesn't.
I'm thinking 5, but I'm just saying tends to be slightly.
But I don't think that's like one of the most important things. Like fix the planet first.
But it's Musk's most important thing, and he's part of the administration, so. Boom.
And he needs to keep him busy, yes. And with Doge, which the Department of Government Efficiency, hopefully he will also be doing that. Although Vivek should probably take.
Oh, Vivek may be on the way. Vivek might be on the way out of that.
Oh, way.
Yeah, they were talking about it today. There's an
Musk
internal
is going
rift.
to be doing everything.
Well, there was an internal rift supposedly, but Trump's saying it's okay. But the rumors are there, so we'll keep an eye on what happens with Vivek.
I didn't know.
Yeah, they just said they were.
But between Musk and him,
They wouldn't say, but they say Vivek may be on the way out. Is what they were saying, and this was coming from internal sources within the Trump camps. So we'll see what happens.
Well, a lot of the internal camps are kind of fighty right now, be it the media people or the people within, because of course that happens once you get to the end of the race. You kind of want to figure out what to actually do next, and a lot of people I think are going to find that a lot of their ideas maybe aren't so welcome. As they thought they were going to be.
I think they're all welcome, and I think there's a room for everybody in the tent. If you look at the most radical individual, it may be Bannon, and I really like Bannon, and I really like a lot of his ideas. But when he goes up against Musk, sometimes they clash heads, and Bannon loses. But I was watching an interview with Bannon yesterday, and he said, "Yeah, me and Musk clash, and I clash with a lot of people in here, but." I'm really just jockeying for position, and I don't think Musk shouldn't be part of the administration.
But Bannon is smart. I wasn't thinking of him. I was thinking more of, the smaller players.
Who are the smaller players?
Well, right now they're fighting. They're fighting, mostly the media people are all fighting about, like, if the Israel thing was a good idea, if we should be putting certain people in that they don't think should be in there, blah, blah,
Well, it's crazy to see what's happening with the Israel thing. If this is more of a long-term peace, the leftists are going to be coming over to Trump.
Yeah.
These crazy leftists maybe end up supporting Trump.
Some of them.
Anyway, he also announced the Green New Deal is no more.
Good.
Do you have anything to say about the Green New Deal is no more?
No, I just said good.
And what went along with the Green New Deal being no more
The cars
was...
thing, I think, is more interesting.
That was the next thing. He canceled EV mandates, meaning there'll still be EVs in the United States.
Electric vehicles.
There'll still be EVs in the United States, but you'll be able to choose between gas-powered engines or electric engines. And the car manufacturing companies won't be forced to make EVs if they don't want to.
Which I think, and I mean, the kind of needle had swung the other way for a while now, but I don't know what this means for Mexico, because I keep seeing all of these Chinese companies coming into Mexico and trying to dominate the EV market, which they are doing, unfortunately, and now the government has also announced their little goofy-looking EV cars. But now the fact that the U.S. is completely going against it, which is a good thing.
Also, you don't like these Chinese electric cars, but BYD did make the SUV that floats on water. And it's electric. So like
yes, but they're not safe. They don't have the same standards. We don't know what security risks there are with them. And electric vehicles in general actually produce more pollution and cause more damage to the earth than
Well, I don't like
others.
electric vehicles, but if I were to have to pick an electric vehicle, the BYD SUV looks the best.
Yes, it looks the best, but that's the thing. As many things made in China, they look great, and then they don't.
You just hate everything China.
No, I've seen EV cars, Chinese EV cars, BYD cars bursting up in
There's
flames.
And
it's happening in Mexico too. They're bursting up in flames.
There's a reason our content's not on TikTok, and it's not because of me. It's because of you. You refuse to put our content on TikTok
Yes,
you
I
hate
do.
You hate the Chinese
Because I'm
government.
consistent.
Okay. Anyway, we'll go
Because
to
I
the
don't
next.
want to support a communist
Okay.
regime. Thank you.
The next thing was Trump gave out 1,500 pardons to the January 6th protesters.
Yes, which I think, I mean, a lot of people were very angry at him when he left, that he didn't do it. And
Yeah.
now I think it's just the overwhelming cries for it.
Well, and
that
he
finally said, "Sure."
campaigned on this, and people voted for him. So even people that disagree with him, it's not like this is coming out of nowhere. He told everybody he was going to do this, so it was expected that he did it. And if he didn't follow through with this promise, a lot of people were going to be upset.
And I mean, there were a lot of the people that were imprisoned or convicted during January 6th, not convicted, yes, during January 6th that have been imprisoned for the whole time, and there has been no...
Well, a lot of people have been held without trials for over 3 years now.
Yes.
Which within the U.S. Constitution, you're entitled to expedient trial, which was expected to be within 12 months, or you had to be let go. That's not what happened to any of these people. And there was only 6 people that actually were convicted on larger charges. One of them was Enrique Tarrio. He got 20 years. He was the head of the Proud Boys, but he wasn't even at January 6th. But they accused him of organizing the riot somehow with not even being there. So he was actually pardoned today and released already.
Huh.
Yeah. His mother put a tweet out. So I would expect to see him on Tim Pool pretty soon, because he's sometimes a guest on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, that's good. And I mean, it just hopefully will make the Democrats and a lot of people that are against Trump stop using the whole insurrection narrative, because
Well, the thing is,
wasn't.
a lot of people are upset that he's pardoned some of these people that committed violence on the day. But the thing is, because he did it the same day, Joe Biden pardoned his whole
Yes.
family with blanket pardons, including Fauci, including his brother, his sister.
yeah, I guess it kind of
It kind of lets it float under the radar. But Trump did give 1,500 pardons.
Yeah.
So he kind of outdid Biden.
yeah, but Biden's are a bit more angering.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't know if I said earlier, but he pardoned Mark Milley as well,
No,
which
he
Mark Milley was one of the people that was given an order under the last Trump administration.
Biden did, or who? Trump did.
Trump did under the last Trump administration, specifically to pull troops out of certain areas. I believe it was Syria, and they directly disobeyed. So Trump gave him an order, and he never followed through with the order and said he didn't have to. So that was the last thing I had written down for the notes. I know there was a lot more things he said, but I will say Melania Trump in her hat looked amazing today.
Yeah, a lot of people were asking if her hat was bulletproof, and that's why it looked so
The funny thing about her hat is Trump went to kiss her on the way out when he first came out, and the hat got in the way, so they did an air kiss.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like you and I do. But yeah, I mean, momentous day for, I guess, the whole world. Like him, hate him. I mean, it is fact now. They did try to stop him a lot, showing a lot of resilience. And I think overall and in general, the things that are being proposed and the things that are being talked about at least are good.
He's
Good.
he's implemented on the first day through executive orders and already previous legislation all of his large portions of his campaign promises, and he's vowed to go through with the rest of his campaign promises. And a lot of his inner circle says he's worried about his legacy. So how he wants to secure that is following through on his campaign promises themselves. And I think if he's able to do that, J.D. Vance is going to be the next in line. He's going to have 2 consecutive terms, which would give 12 years total. And I don't know how old Barron Trump is, but around that time,
I was going to say
Barron should be coming up right after J.D.
His legacy was standing behind him during the
oh yeah, without a doubt.
taking. Yeah.
Melania bred that kid to be president.
My suitcase.
Okay, is that it for
That
today?
Yeah. I guess. So, well, we went for 56 minutes for our first live back, and having, sorry we didn't have many, images and assets and things, but we're kind of getting back into it again. And
and we're gonna have
video
and a story about the LA fires coming out, and
in
the
Spanish,
and the woke corruption that is
Los
within
Angeles.
the California government.
Well, basically how wokeism ends lives
Through DEI and Yes. That's going to be in Spanish on our regular videos. It might come out later tonight or early tomorrow morning.
Yes, and again, I said it in Spanish, but we were trying to do, lives and everything in Spanish, because we even renamed the channel, that and the guy in Espanol. But since Guy doesn't really speak Spanish yet, he will learn. And honestly, lives help with the algorithm.
Yeah.
And since it's just us two doing everything, I mean, you produce all the light, sound, camera work, everything. That on that side is him. Me is,
the editing and the story writing.
I mean, we do the research together, but doing it all in Spanish, that's me. So we're only 2 people with 4 hands. So having lives more often, even if they're in English, I think will also help us grow, because it's just me, but it is easier to, bounce off of him. And the dog is going to start barking, but...
And that's it for today.
We hope you have a lovely rest of your evening, night, or if you're not watching it live, then whatever time it is.